Welcome, everybody, on this Wednesday night. Excited to be here tonight, aren't we? Boy, you guys sound good. Woo! All right, excited to be here tonight on Wednesday night, right? That's what I'm saying, yes. A couple things before we get started. We are very blessed tonight to have Josh Herndon and his family with us tonight. They are from Romania, so let's give them a big round of applause. Yeah, it's a big deal. Before we get started, just a quick couple of things I'd like to share with you guys first. We are still serving dinners at 5 p.m. and I'm telling you, the spaghetti was good. Everybody agree with me? Yeah, it's pretty good. We're handing out food boxes. I think Kristen and I counted 54 people just in food boxes today got food, and so that's super exciting. Super exciting for that. I'm very excited about that. I would like to thank all the volunteers again today for their help with the food boxes and with the dinner this evening. So big round of applause for you guys as well. But tonight, like I said, we have Josh and his family here. But before we get started, let's go ahead and pray. So, Father, we just praise your mighty and holy name, Jesus. Thank you for the opportunity to come together tonight to worship you, to glorify you, as we get to hear how you are moving around the world. Lord, and I pray tonight that each and every person here tonight leaves different than when they came, that you reveal yourself in an exciting new way, and you anoint them with the willingness to receive that which you have for them, Lord Jesus. And we praise you for these things, Lord. In your mighty and precious name, amen, amen. So at this time, I'd just like to invite Josh up here, take over for us here.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Well, I should probably clarify that I am not Romanian. We have been serving in Romania, in case you wonder. Man, this guy's American accent is perfect. Born and raised here in the States. Oh, I'm already getting in trouble. Okay. Try to eat the mic. I need to remember. But it's really great to be here. The food was amazing, so thank you. We are moving to Italy, so I appreciate the Italian meal. I'll let you know how it compares to real Italian food here. Don't. Okay. Yeah, we're not starting off very well. We'll get there. Yeah, thanks for having my family and I. It's great to be with you. We do serve in Europe, and you can probably imagine that ministry in Europe has to look a lot different than it does in other parts of the world. We're volunteers in the country of Guatemala. My wife and I, before we got married, were serving in different world areas where mission work looks normally like it does, as you would picture it. But in Europe, in first world Europe especially, ministry has to look a little bit different than we typically imagine. And that's pretty normal for a country where Christianity really got going, and that's how we are followers of Christ today. That message was brought over hundreds of years ago. So when we do ministry in Europe, we know that needs to look a little bit different, that we need to find a good creative way to not only share the gospel, but also to build community. And one of the ways that we have been able to do this is with sports. And we found that we had a lot more success with using sports if we start off with sports that these kids have never played before. We always have people ask us, well, why don't you use soccer as an outreach? Because we know that they play soccer. We know that they're really good at it. Some of the best soccer teams in the world are from Europe. And I explained that that's why we don't use soccer. So if we're going to have a sports camp and we invite kids from the community to come, then those kids who are really good at soccer, they take the field and they are terrible about sharing that field. So the girls don't get to play. The boys who don't play soccer don't get to play. It's just the ones who are really good. They just hog the field. But I need to explain to you there are other reasons why we don't use soccer. I'm not very good at it. And because soccer's not a real sport. So we decided to use real sports, specifically baseball and American football. And you can probably imagine the chaos that ensues when we start a camp and we're planning for 40 or 50 and then 120, 130, 140 kids show up. And we just let them onto the field. We're terrible about turning them away. We're terrible about saying no, although we probably should start doing that. And you can probably imagine what it looks like. When you have kids who have never played these sports before and we unload our car and we bring out the big sports bags and open them up and we lay out the bats and the balls and the gloves and the helmets and we tell the kids not to touch anything until we explain what they're for. Now, it's been a long time since I've been in the States. I don't know how well American kids listen. Okay. Yeah, so like Spanish, Greek, and Romanian kids. That's good to know. So when we tell them don't pick up the bat and begin to swing it just inches from their siblings' heads, we also realize that it's very difficult to explain to them just how hard a baseball is, and that there's a reason why we tag people out at base and we don't throw it at their head when they're running, which they tend to do. I would love to start using dodgeball as a ministry, just not while we're playing baseball. You know, I can keep telling you about all the problems that we have in our sports ministry, but I don't need to tell you because I have a video that will show it. So if you can load up that first video, we call this Terror on Transylvanian Turf.
Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack. I don't care if I never get back, so it's root, root, root for the home team. They don't win, it's a shame. It's 1, 2, 3 strikes out. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack. I don't care if I never get back. And it's root, root, root for the home team. And if they don't win, what else is new? And it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out. At the old ball game. Play it, Jethro.
You can see how fast the kids get going at the end of camp. We're really excited to just get them out of there. There you get to see my family, my wife Shannon, my daughter Karis, my son Caden. Whenever we go anywhere, we try to take a selfie of the 4 of us as a reminder of where we have been. And then after we take a picture of the 4 of us, my wife always says it's time for a good picture. And so I know that's my cue to get out and take a picture of the 3 of them. So I want you to be able to see them because right now their backs are to you. If you think about it, pray for my kids. It's been a very long home assignment. We've been traveling around for nearly 6 months now. I mean, that's not why you need to pray for them. They've been traveling around with 2 perfect parents. But pray for them because, unfortunately, they have had to spend a lot of time with my in-laws over on the Oregon coast. And I feel terrible that they've had so much time with Shannon's parents. After 4.5 years of serving in Transylvania, I bring them home, and again, they're stuck with a blood-sucking monster. So, a lot has changed for our family since the last time we were home. We were back in 2019, and since then, many members of our family have joined us on the mission field. Well, they haven't joined us. They're not, like, with us. I mean, they're with us. They're not dead. I'll start over. Members of our family are also missionaries in the Church of the Nazarene. Shannon's parents, my in-laws, after 40 years of pastoral ministry, felt like God was calling them into another chapter in their life, and they began to pray about what that chapter would be. And at that time, we were serving as missionaries in Greece, and as they began to pray, they felt like God was calling them over to come and serve with us which I was really confused because that doesn't seem like something God would say. But as the World Mission and Nazarene Church caught word that they were interested in missions, well, after 40 years of pastoral ministry and my father-in-law had his doctorate degree, they found that there was a much better place for them. And so they moved them all the way over to Sri Lanka, an island nation just off the coast of India. So this story had a really great beginning. But then as we moved from Greece to Romania, her parents wanted to be much closer to us, so they go and serve in the country of Bulgaria just south of us. And that's what we call a plot twist or a crisis moment in our story. Shannon's mom was invited back to the U.S. for a wedding. And on the plane ride over back to the U.S., while she's in the air, the entire world shuts down. It is the beginning of the quarantine of the worldwide pandemic. She lands in the state of Texas, and she is trapped there for months and months, 6,300 miles away from us in Romania and her husband in Bulgaria, which is what happens when Shannon's dad and I pray the same prayer. They were separated for about a third of a year, which I can only imagine was not long enough. The result of that is that they have since retired from the mission field. So what used to be a 6-hour drive to get to them is back to being a 15-hour flight. So I tell you that to let you know that things in the world are improving. My sister Sarah and her husband Camilo and their 3 kids are also missionaries in the Church of the Nazarene. And they have been serving in the country of Equatorial Guinea. And if you don't know where that is, that's okay. They don't know either. They unfortunately have also decided to move much closer to us. I don't want to give you the wrong impression that we don't want family with us. It's just that, well, no, that's it. They'll be moving from Africa to Europe to the country of Luxembourg. If you don't know where Luxembourg is, that's okay. They don't know either. It will be a 12-hour drive from where they will be moving to where we will be moving to in northern Italy, and halfway for both of us is a Swiss chocolate factory. Yeah, so now instead of pretending to be happy to see each other, we'll have something that will actually make us happy if or when we meet in the middle. We have a table back there for you to take a look at if you're interested, things from the country that we have been living in, things from the country that we will soon be calling home. So if you have never seen or touched anything from Transylvania, this is your opportunity to do so. Vampiric viruses are a lot less dangerous than COVID-19. And it's possible those items have both. One of those viruses will help you live forever. And the other, well, just choose wisely. We do have some coins, Romanian coins. If you like to collect coins from other countries, feel free to grab one of those. We have had kids in the past try to exchange American coins. I love to take money from kids, but you don't have to exchange them. You can just, so look through them, make sure no American coins have slipped in, but if you want to grab one, feel free to. They're not real silver, so they're not going to take care of vampires, but feel free to grab one. Also, do you guys pray for your missionaries? 2 of you? That makes this next part really uncomfortable. We have prayer cards back there that you can feel free to grab to remember to pray for us. You'll see in the big picture that it is a celebration of the fact that our daughter will no longer be joining us. She will be staying here in the States to attend university in about 20 days or less. And so this is a reminder that she's no longer welcome on any of our future journeys. That's what happens when you abandon this team. We also made our prayer cards extra big this year to cover up those missionaries you no longer pray for. And that doesn't seem like it's going to be a problem for this group. We also have smaller ones if prayer cards and praying for missionaries is your dirty little secret. You can hide these, so that might work better. All right, enough of the nonsense. Let's talk about me. The beard is a fairly new thing for me. I started growing it when we were in Greece. It was a very cold winter in a suburb of Thessaloniki called Panorama. The snow came, our pipes froze, they burst, and we didn't have running water for nearly a week. So I couldn't shave, and things started to grow. So I just let it grow, and then during the spring when it started getting warm, I shaved it. I did that for the next few winters. And then I started growing my winter beard before pandemic, and then obviously we weren't going anywhere. In fact, we were trapped in our homes much longer than all of you here. So thank you as Americans for posting your freedom so early in 2020. That was really nice for us to for us to see. Finally, we were released from our prison homes, and I started to realize that the beard gave me powers that I didn't have before. People started coming up to me on the streets and confessing their sins, as they do the bearded Orthodox priests that are there. Well, not exactly, but I could tell that they wanted to. It's just that I have a face that says, no thanks, I'm not interested. I also realized that the boys who were interested in my daughter before the pandemic were all of a sudden terrified of me. So yeah, I was keeping it. But I started to know that children started to respond to me differently. So we have a safe house for survivors of human trafficking in the Romanian capital of Bucharest. It was after the quarantine, but still during the pandemic. We wanted to go and see how all the kids were getting along. It had been a while since we had been there, so we walk in the door, and this group of kids, they live there, and this boy here in the middle, Alex, he sees me walk in. Now, I knew that he knew me, or that he should have known me. Either way, he shouldn't have wanted to kill me. And that's kind of the look that he gives me. But as soon as we lock eyes, he immediately puts his head down and starts very slowly coming up to me, just shuffling his feet in the same creepy way that my mother-in-law does at 6 in the morning when she comes to visit us. I'm waiting there forever as he comes across that whole house, finally gets right in front of me and whispers something. I don't hear him, so I ask him to repeat. He does, and I still don't get it. So I get on my knees, eye to eye with this shy little beast, and I ask him to repeat once more what he said. He looks at me and says, Ești Moș Crăciun? Are you Old Man Christmas? And so while I begin mentally drafting the letter that I'm going to write to the real Santa about how this kid deserves absolutely nothing, he just moves into the wish list portion of this visit. He says that he wants a drone. Nothing big, nothing fancy, just something that he can fly around the safe house. The same safe house filled with 15 women, 3 infants, and this group of small kids. Now, I would love to give Alex a gift that makes everyone around him miserable. But I decided not to. I hope he's enjoying that priceless piece of coal instead. I mean, any kid his age can do just as much damage with that if he's talented, so here's hoping. You know, when I think about these kids, when I think about their moms, when I think about the people that our churches are ministering to over there in Romania, I think about how the pandemic has affected all of them differently. Some of them have really thrived during this time of limited contact, and there's others like me who have really struggled. I think about the older women who attend our church in Bucharest for many reasons, but one of those reasons being to escape the abuse that they're facing at home. And then all of a sudden, a pandemic closes that door, and now they're stuck, victims of abuse. But then I think about our younger women who were victims of human trafficking before the pandemic, but because of the pandemic saw their slave quarters closed, and now those young women finding a way to escape are now free, victims of abuse no longer. But then I think about our little girls who are up in the northern part of Transylvania, who always had the watchful eyes of those within the church. But when a pandemic closes that door, they run out of hope and do what many young Roma gypsy girls do. They're married off to teenage boys. And now those little girls are also trapped, victims of lost childhoods and domestic violence. I want to tell you some of their stories. I want to tell you where we have seen God working, but also where we still need to see him work. But more importantly, I want to introduce you to members of our family. And because they're members of our family, they are now members of your family, the family of God. I also want you to know that these stories are not my stories. These stories are your stories. It is because of your love and faithfulness for missions around the world that makes the work that your Nazarene brothers and sisters do half a world away possible. These are your stories. I want to tell you about Anka. Let's see if this will work. Maybe it won't. There we go. Yeah, that one. We'll see if it, okay, yeah, we're back on track. In Sigmandru, Romania, our church doubles during the week as a child development center. Children from the community, they come to our church and they sing songs and they hear stories, they make a craft and they eat a meal. Now these kids, they sing songs at home, but they're not good songs. They hear stories at home, but they're not good stories. If they make anything at home, it's usually with dirty and broken things, and rarely do they eat a meal at home, which means that when they come to the church, this is probably the only meal they're going to eat that day. Now, Sigmandru is a poor community. It is a Roma gypsy community, and it's a transient community. We have seen men from that town leave that village to work in other parts of Europe, and this wouldn't be so bad if those men would just take the money that they earn and send it back home to take care of their families, but they don't. Most of that men, they stay where they're working, starting second families there, leaving their wives home alone to take care of the house and kids. Now, I don't want to put the wrong image in your mind, one of a professional woman in her 20s and 30s who takes care of the house and knows how to take care of the kids. Most of the moms that I am talking about are in their teens and not their late teens. Anka is 10 years old when she begins coming to our church. She hears about the church from other kids in town, about the songs they sing and the stories they hear, the crafts they make and the food they eat. And this sounds pretty good to 10-year-old Anka, but let's be honest, anything's better than what's waiting for her at home. You see, at 10 years of age, Anka is being beaten by her mother. She's also the servant of the house. And Anka's job is to wash the clothes of everyone living there, and there are a lot of people living there. And with no running water and no electricity in the home, washing the clothes of everyone means gathering them up by hand, walking them across the field to a runoff creek that is there, wading into whatever filth is down there, and washing those clothes by hand. And it means doing it in the cold and frigid Transylvanian winters. But when the washing is done, well, there's cooking to be done. And after the cooking is done, there's cleaning to be done. After the cleaning is done, there are siblings to be taken care of. And after the siblings are cared for, well, there's a beating to be had. Because somewhere between the washing and the cooking and the cleaning and the taking care of the other kids, there's always something that doesn't meet mom's satisfaction. But when she comes to that church, Anka is able to be a 10-year-old again. She's able to sing songs about a God who loves her, hear stories about a Jesus who heals those around him. She's able to make a craft and sneak it into her home as a reminder that she has a church family who loves her and cares for her and prays for her. And she's able to scarf down a bowl of soup and a sandwich, a meal that she knows will never be waiting for her at home. And all of a sudden, just like that, a pandemic closes that door. The beatings will continue. Obviously, a pandemic doesn't stop that. And the chores will continue. Obviously, a pandemic doesn't slow that down. But time with a family who loves her and cares for her, yeah, that's going to have to stop. Not forever, but unfortunately long enough. Anka turns 11 and she runs out of hope. If she's going to be a slave, she might as well be one outside of her house. If she's going to be a servant, it might as well be to her own home. So she does what many young Roma gypsy girls her age do when they run out of hope. They're married off to a teenage boy. Almost immediately becomes pregnant. At the age of 11, Anka is a wife. And at almost 12, she is now a mother. A child who before the pandemic was a part of our children's program, she now returns as part of our Mothers and Babies program. A program started by the Sigmanju Church of the Nazarene to help moms just like Anka fit into their new roles and take care of their new responsibilities. I want you to know that the church is still involved in Anka's life, just in a much different way, a more depressing way. You know, whenever I see Anka, I picture her there in the upper room with the rest of the disciples after the crucifixion of Jesus. They've had all of this time with the Son of God, and things have been going so incredibly well, and then just like that, it's all over. I picture her there sitting at the table with them as the questions begin to swirl in their minds. Do they really think that it's all over? Don't they know that Jesus can't be contained? That he's walking this way? That he's right outside this door? And Anka, like the disciples, begins to realize that it's not that the story is over, it's just that a new chapter is starting. I want you to know that you are a part of that new chapter in Anka's life. The children's program that she was a part of before the pandemic, the Mothers and Babies program that she is a part of now, everything that she is a part of there in that community is only possible because of your love and support of missions around the world. Anka is your mission story. But for every Anka, we have a Betty. Betty is different than a lot of the other girls that we minister to because Betty comes from a two-parent household. But this didn't help her much. You see, Betty's father is an alcoholic, and he is a violent drunk at that. Betty is 11 when she sees her mom packing a suitcase. And she believes that for the very first time, they're going on a trip. The first trip as a family. So excitedly, she runs to her mom and asks, "Where are we going?" Her mom looks at her and says, "You're not going anywhere. I'm going. You're staying. I just can't take this anymore." An 11-year-old Betty doesn't understand why mom gets to leave this abusive house, but she has to stay. It doesn't take long for dad to bring home a new girlfriend. And it doesn't take long for Betsy to see that this is going to be a fairy tale, just the wrong kind. You see, Dad's new girlfriend is the storybook wicked stepmother. Betty comes home from school, sees a small stool sitting by the front door, and she wonders what that's for. Well, she's about to find out. Her new job is to walk in, take off her backpack, set it on the floor, then go to that stool and get on her knees facing it. And this is when Dad's girlfriend walks in. Betty has to take off her shoes, wash her feet, and then this woman slams her foot onto the top of Betty's head and screams in her ear, "Do you obey me?" every single day for 4 years. Betty finally reaches an age where she's able to work outside the house, and she couldn't be more excited to leave. She finds a job very soon, and almost immediately a young man begins to notice her. It's her laugh that gives it away, how innocent she is. So this young man begins doing everything he can to try to separate her from her family. Well, based on the abuse that's going on at home, it isn't hard to do. And by the end of that first week of work, Betty is being trafficked by this man. But I told you, Betty is different than a lot of our other girls. You see, Betty is a fighter. But when you fight, this comes at a cost. You see, her trafficker lives close to a self-serve car wash there in Transylvania. And it is a cold winter, like all of our winters are. In the middle of the night, the trafficker goes out and grabs the hose and begins to spray water on the concrete slab, letting it freeze, then forces Betty to come out and sleep on that frozen pad all night long for the entire month of January. Betty gets horribly ill, and word gets back to her father in town. He comes to get her, and as he grabs her by her arm there as she sleeps on that pad in the middle of the night, she celebrates, believing that she is finally free, until her dad yanks her up, takes her, and locks her in a room, never letting her leave. And then just like that, a pandemic opens that door. Betty has the time to find a way out of that room. She reaches a phone, immediately calls the police, and then begins to sob on the phone when they ask her the question, "Where can you go?" Betty realizes there is no place for her to go. She can't stay trapped in a room for the rest of her life, and she can't leave because her trafficker is out on the streets looking for her. She's trapped. And this is when Open Door, Ushadeskisa, our safe house there in Bucharest, gets the call. When the police invade the home of the trafficker, they find that there are many women being held captive there. One of them is Betty's best friend from grade school. But as they release the girl, she doesn't want to come to the house. She finally has her independence, and she wants to try to make a life of her own. Betty comes to here, and she is safe, and she is warm, and she is fed. But before the trafficker is caught, he finds her best friend and kills her. It's here in this house that Betty, for the first time, is able to hear the story of Jesus Christ. Now, what's amazing is she doesn't hear it from the pastor of our local church because it's the pandemic and he's trapped at home. And she doesn't hear about Jesus from me. I'm trapped in my own home miles and miles away. She hears about Jesus Christ from Kati, one of our other human trafficking survivors, who gave her heart and life to Jesus Christ when she first came into that house. And during the pandemic, Kati has become the spiritual leader of this home, introducing every woman who comes into that door, introducing them to who Jesus is. Betty gets so excited to hear the story about Jesus Christ that there in this house, she gives her heart and life to him. Our church in Bucharest was able to open for 2 weeks before we were forced by the government to close again, and that was enough. As Betty decides that she wants to be baptized, publicly declaring her new faith in Jesus Christ, becoming a member of our family, a member of your family as well. You know, every time I think about Betty, I picture her there on the shore of the sea with the rest of the Israelites. After being enslaved for what seems like forever, they're finally free, yet just down the road, they find themselves trapped yet again. With certain death in front of them and the enemy pursuing them from behind, there is nowhere for this group to go. I want you to know that Betty's release is not near as miraculous as it was for the Israelites. But please don't believe it's any less important. With her trafficker behind bars, Betty comes and sings praises to the God who rescued those Israelites so many years ago. I want you to know that that same God is rescuing slaves today. I also want you to know that you are a part of Betty's story. The church where she worships, the home where she lives, the services that are provided to her are only possible because of each and every one of you, your love and support of missions around the world. Betty is your mission story. Tamea lives with her father there in northern Transylvania. Actually, there's a lot of people living in that home. Tamea's story is a sad one. In fact, Tamea comes from a long line of sad stories. Tamea's mom was also a child bride at the age of 11, given to a teenage boy. Almost immediately becomes pregnant, gives birth to a little baby boy, the boy who will one day be Tamea's older brother. But Tamea's mom is 11, and she longs to do what other 11-year-old girls are doing. It's another cold winter with very thin walls and no floor to speak of in that house. It's almost as cold on the inside as it is on the outside. So Tamea's mom knows that she needs to take care of this little baby boy, but wants to go outside and play too. So before she leaves, she starts a little fire in the iron stove that sits there in the corner of that one-room house, and then lays her baby in front of it to keep him warm, then runs outside to watch the boys play in the field. Tamea's mom should have made sure that the fire was lit. She didn't. She comes back inside hours later and finds her baby frozen to death on the floor. Tamea's mom ends up having 12 children and doesn't stick around to take care of any of them. Tamea grows up believing there is no one who loves her, no one who cares for her, no one who is going to take care of her. Until she's out on the streets of that town and begins to hear the kids talking about a place just down the dirt road through the white iron fence, that there is a family who's taking the kids of that community in, a place where the kids can sing songs and hear stories and make crafts and eat meals. Tamea becomes a part of that children's program there every time the church doors are open, then goes home to a house covered in walnuts. Walnuts that she is forced to spend the weekend searching for in the bear-infested woods of Transylvania. But at least she knows there's a family who loves her and cares for her, until just like that, a pandemic closes that door. Tamea, like Anka, runs out of hope, and unfortunately she becomes her mother. 12 years old, given to a teenage boy, almost immediately becomes pregnant. And with the arrival of the baby comes the arrival of the abuse by her adolescent groom. I want you to know that Tamea is still with the father of that child. We were able to move them out of this house into an apartment building owned by the church. Yet every time I turn down this dirt road and look off to my right, up onto that apartment on the second story, I think there sits another girl who before the pandemic was part of our children's program, but now returns as part of our mothers and babies program. But at least she knows that that family is still there. Outside of her window, she can see that church down the same dirt road that Anka walks. Every time I think about Tamea, I picture her there in the belly of the fish with Jonah, wondering how she got there. A victim of lost opportunities and ignored advice. At least I can understand Tamea's story just a little bit better. A small 12-year-old girl, so small she doesn't even look like she's 12, from a history of abuse and neglect is a lot different than a grown man running from his calling. Yet there they both sit, wondering if they will ever get a second chance. I want you to know that Tamea will have that second chance. She is going to again hear the story about the man who spent 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the fish, and she is going to know exactly how he's feeling. But more importantly, she's going to hear the story about the one who spent 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the earth, who died for her and rose again to give her new life, a life that she desperately needs and a hope that she's searching for. I want you to know that you are a part of Tamea's story. The children's program that she was a part of before, the mothers and babies program that she's a part of now, even the apartment that she is sleeping in tonight is only possible because of each and every one of you. Tamea is your mission story. Can I tell you one more? I mean, I'm kind of up here, so I guess you don't really have a choice. Roberta was 14 years old when she was trafficked. Abused not only by the trafficker, but by the trafficker's two brothers, the trafficker's father, the trafficker's grandfather, and his uncle. She was told, "You belong to us, and this is your seal. You are ours." And after they were done with her, well, they began to sell her to other men. During this time, Roberta is forced to get 2 abortions. She gets pregnant a 3rd time, and the trafficker absolutely loses it. He decides he's going to do whatever it takes to get Roberta to lose this baby. So the first thing the trafficker does is strip her down and then throws her out into the snow in the middle of the night. Then runs and dumps buckets of cold water on her head. Then runs back inside and watches from the window just to see what will happen. But Roberta lives, and the baby inside her lives. When that doesn't work, the trafficker calls up 10 of his friends to come over and abuse Roberta for 48 hours straight. But Roberta lives, and her baby lives. When that doesn't work, he begins to beat her inside the house, shoving her up into the corner of furniture, leaving marks and scars on her body that exist to this day. But Roberta lives, and her baby lives. She tries to escape, and as she runs outside of that house, the sister of the trafficker grabs her by the back of her hair, drags her on the ground back inside. She and the trafficker tie Roberta to a chair for 2 days. No food, no water, no bathroom breaks. But Roberta lives, and her baby lives. It's finally time for Roberta to give birth, but there is no rest for her. Even as she recovers from giving birth, she is forced to work in the fields during the day, and then her trafficker drives her to clients at night, never allowed to leave that house with her baby in her arms. She comes back from working in the fields one day and notices her baby crying uncontrollably. So she goes to feed him, and that helps for a minute, but then as he continues to weep, she looks down at his little face and notices that there's blood in the baby's mouth. So she asks the trafficker, "What happened to him?" "I don't know, I guess he rolled out of bed," was the response. Roberta says, "He's 6 weeks old. He can't get up. He can't get out of bed. I need to take him to the hospital." "Then take him to the hospital," the trafficker scoffs. For the very first time, Roberta is able to leave that house with that baby boy in her arms. They go to the hospital and walk in, and it is clear to everyone there that they are victims of abuse. Both of them are admitted to the hospital, but only one of them is released. It's found that Roberta's baby has a fractured skull, and pieces of his skull are lodged in his brain. That little baby goes in and out of a coma for a while, but it ends up being just too much for his little body to handle. Roberta comes to us, and the first thing that she has to do is bury her newborn baby boy. But for the first time, surrounded by women who know exactly how she's feeling. Roberta comes to that house, and just like Betty, hears the story of Jesus Christ for the very first time. Hears about a God who loves her, about a Jesus who died for her, about a Holy Spirit who will never leave her. And not even knowing how any of this is possible or how it all works, she doesn't care. She knows there in that house that she needs Jesus in her life. Gives her heart and life to him. And during the same 2 weeks that Betty decides that she wants to be baptized, Roberta says, "I want to be baptized too," publicly declaring her faith in Jesus Christ, becoming a member of the body of Christ and a member of our family as well. You know, every time I see Roberta, I picture her there in the prison cell of Joseph in Genesis 39. After being sold into slavery by those who were supposed to love him best, Joseph is somehow able to show the love of God to those that God brings into his path. And you know what? Roberta is able to do the exact same thing. She comes into that safe house and she sees this little guy. This is Michael, Nicoletta's baby. And Nicoletta's story will have to wait for another day. Nicoletta's family wants Michael to be baptized in the Orthodox Church because they're part of that tradition. The problem is that her family is part of her trafficking story. So when Roberta hears this, she says, "Nicoletta, I don't want you to go to your family. So if it's important for Michael to be baptized in the Orthodox Church, then I want to do it. I want to pay for the church. I want to pay for the flowers. I want to pay for the candles." And Nicoletta is confused. "Why do you want to do all of this for my son?" she asks. Roberta says, I want to do for your baby boy what I can't do for mine. Those two young women, they join hands, walk out the door of the safe house, through the security gate, down the road to the First Orthodox Church they come to. They tell the church their story. The church is so blessed by it that they decide to cover all the costs and even call in the choir to sing. Just days after burying the son of one, those women come together to celebrate the birth and baptism of another. I want you to know that you are a part of Roberta's story. The church where she worships, the home where she lives, the services that are provided to her are only possible because of your love and support of missions around the world. Roberta is your mission story. Our story changes a bit too as we have finished up our time in Transylvania, Romania, and we'll be moving to Florence, Italy very, very soon. I want you to keep praying for those that God has brought into our path in Romania. Pray for those that he's already ministering to in the country that we will soon call home. But remember to pray for new members of your family. People who are coming to know who Jesus is, some of them for the very first time. Know that lives are being transformed by the good news of Jesus Christ. I always say there's nothing special about what my family of four does. We do what you do, just an ocean away. So keep being the hands and feet of Jesus here. And we will do what you do a little further from home. I have one more video I want to show you because I want you to see what it looks like from our perspective. A first-person view of what it looks like when people come to know who Jesus is. To see lives are being transformed by the good news. As you see this, pray for members of your family. That they would continue to grow in their faith, that they would continue to heal. Say a prayer for your mission stories and know that each one of these belong to you. God bless you.
You are not hidden. There's never been a moment you were forgotten. You are not hopeless. Though you have been broken, your innocence stolen, I hear you whisper underneath your breath. I hear your SOS, your SOS. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true, I will rescue you. There is no distance that cannot be covered over and over. You're not defenseless. I'll be your shelter, I'll be your armor. I hear you whisper underneath your breath. I hear your SOS, your SOS. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true.
Wow. Thank you very much for sharing that and how God is moving around the world. Before we leave tonight, we're going to be taking an offering. Um, Probably the easiest way that we should do this is probably on your way out. If you would like to put something in the tithe box in the sanctuary or in the foyer, please feel free to do that. You know, it's amazing how God is moving around the world and the similar situations, and you know how the lives are changed of these little girls, of these little families. You know, and it's our financial capability that we do this, that we help missionaries around the world. Is we're a missional church ourselves. We have our evangelical outreach ministry here at home, backyard. You know, but in that we need to help support what's happening around the world. And so again, thank you, Josh, for sharing that with us. Also, as he mentioned earlier, on the back table, there's some pretty cool stuff. I can see some pretty cool stuff over here. He's got some kind of a white statue-looking thing with a long nose on it. I don't know exactly. I think it's moving right now, so I don't know. But on your way out, please feel free to check that out too. Stick around and talk to them a little bit if you would like. Oh, all right. We got questions and answer time. Okay. We do have plenty. Okay. I have a question. What kind of food do they eat? Seriously.
So our traditional dish is called sarmale, which is boiled cabbage rolls. Sounds amazing, doesn't it? They're not bad. Carrots, are they good? With ground beef and rice inside, served with polenta, which we call mamaliga, and sour cream. It is, I guess the best way to describe it is like yellow corn grits. No. Oh, wow, that's the first time I've heard people cheer for Romanian food. That's, yeah. Oh, yeah, it doesn't have tomatoes in it.